Divorce doesn't just divide a family, it can divide a gym family too. And it can create a lot of extra stress in the gym if owners and their policies are not ready for it. Hi, guys, and welcome to this episode of the Full Out Cheer podcast. I'm Danielle, and I am your host for today. So we just hosted our showcase last weekend, and it was super cool, actually. We had 9 schools there. We had 2 university teams, a cheer and a dance team. We had, 5 elite cheer teams, 3 prep teams from my gym. The 5 elite were from my gym. 3 dance teams we have this year, a couple of novice teams. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun, so much work. Kind of glad it's over, even though every year I really look forward to it. But I'm kind of glad it's over because it just went really well and it really kicks off our season. Tomorrow will be our first competition of the season. So I guess when I say I'm glad it's over, I'm glad it's over because it means that now we get to start competing. Did every team do super well and hit everything? No, that didn't happen. So maybe I'll do another episode sometime soon about what it's like when your teams don't hit a competition and how to make sure you have a good event even when they don't hit. Because we definitely experienced a little bit of that at Showcase. But you know what? Isn't that why we have Showcase? We get these kids out on the floor and get them doing the stuff so that by the time they go to competition, they feel good about the routines themselves. So tomorrow we will compete in Kansas City. And when I looked at the schedule, I was like, okay, we're this small gym in Warrensburg, Missouri. I own Twister Sports. I didn't say that yet, but we're this small gym in Warrensburg, Missouri. We're going to be competing against some of the big gyms in Kansas City in some of the same divisions. And I think we'll hold our own. I think we'll be pretty good. But it does bring up we don't compete varsity, and so we don't do division splits because the Open does not split by division. They split by size of team. And it was just interesting because I thought, the drama that division splits has caused in cheer, we're going to talk today about what it's like when you have parents getting divorced in your gym, because talk about the ultimate division split. It can create more drama than D1, D2 ever did. And it can honestly be really hard and emotional to navigate that. Whether you have parents who are coming in who've never done a sport before for their child, and so they have an unreasonable expectation of how you're going to handle things for them. Or maybe they went to another gym that was able to do other accommodations. Or you have a family that has been in your gym for a couple of years and now they're getting divorced and you have to navigate what that looks like with them. It gets very emotional because these kids are in our gym so much that the gym becomes a second home to them. And it's almost like where one family may be dividing and one family may be undergoing these really challenging times, the gym family might be the most stable family they have in that moment. And it might be the most stable environment they have in that moment too. I will preface all this by saying Justin and I have a blended family. I've said that a couple times on this podcast. My daughter, our youngest, her dad used to live here locally and used to take her to competitions, and I would take her to competitions. And so we have a lot of experience. Not only do I have it on the gym owner end, but we also have it on the parenting end. And then Justin has 3 kids now. They're all older. His youngest turned 19 yesterday. 2 of them did cheer and their mom lives locally. And so, we've experienced a lot of different things, both on the parent end and on the gym owner end, of how to navigate through these really sticky, emotional situations. Sometimes it's bad. Sometimes it's we lost the cheer uniform and we don't know which house to look at. We're 3 days out from Showcase and we lost the cheer uniform. And you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? It's even worse when it's the dance uniform and you're like, no, those 14 kids, that's the 14 uniforms I have. And there's nobody you can borrow from. Sometimes it's even worse. These are all kind of things that have happened in my gym over the years. I've heard it's dad's weekend and he won't be bringing her to competition next weekend. I've heard, can we split payments? Mom can pay on the 3rd, dad can pay on the 10th. I've heard kids completely quit I had a kid years ago who loved cheerleading, and she had worked so hard for back handspring, and she had worked really hard to become a flyer. She really wanted to. She got both of those things in one season, and about a month later decided to quit because her parents were splitting, and dad had said, well, you're going to cheer instead of do basketball. The child was just in a tricky position. She wanted everybody to be happy, and so she quit cheer that year so that she could play basketball. It's just hard. There's so many circumstances that come up. And though I can't prepare you for every one of them in this podcast episode, I'm going to tell you some of my experiences and how we handle some of those tricky situations in the gym. It's hard because these kids are juggling two households. Whether their parents were divorced before they ever came into your gym or they're just now getting divorced, like these kids have a different norm than anybody else they know. Back in the day, Justin's kids, the three older ones, they would go back and forth from his house one week to mom's house the next week. And now that they're older, something they said, they all came back to visit, and they're all like adults now and like moved away. They came back to visit. And one of the things one of them said was, that was the hardest part of growing up, was that we just had two completely different households. They were run differently. Like going to dad's one week and then switching to mom's the next week was like completely different rules, completely different, just in the way that things were run, how busy we were, or traveling or doing things at one house versus just kind of laid back homebodies at the other. Like it was just hard. They felt like there wasn't a lot of stability because they were just two completely different households. I know for my daughter, it was challenging too. And her dad moved away when she was 6. But before that, she's been cheering since she was 3. He would take her to competitions, and we just had to stay super organized. He was very supportive. He would actually sit and watch her practices. And then if I was still coaching, he'd take her to dinner or something like that and then bring her home for the night. But it was always hard to navigate those like tricky situations. These kids being put in the middle of all of it, whether the parents are like amazing and get along all the time and never, disagree on anything in front of their kids, like even those kids can still have challenges, right? Even those kids can still feel oh man, I don't want to forget my cheer uniform. I'm going to dad's this weekend and I need to make sure I bring my practice wear. And at the last minute, the coach is asking us to wear this red bow for a performance instead of the white one. And I brought the red one. And now I need to go back to mom's and get the red one. Like that's one circumstance of even kids, the stress that they experience when their parents do get along. And now add into the mix parents who don't get along or don't communicate directly with one another, or they do communicate directly with one another. It's like too direct. And you have these kids who have just impossible circumstances. I myself was a child of divorce, actually twice, my mom and my dad, and then my dad and my stepmom. I can speak from experience. Like you don't know how to make everybody happy. And as a kid, that's all you want to do. You just want to make your parents happy and make them proud of you. And so these kids are just in really tough situations. It's hard because people aren't being like, they might be dramatic and they might bring their problems into the gym. But at the same time, like you all have had those cheer moms who like, these are their friends. The people in the gym are their friends. And now dad is coming into the gym and feels really uncomfortable bringing the child for practice because he knows that mom and all of her friends know the details of everything. They're all going to be in the gym too. It's hard because the kids have to grow up faster than they have ever had to grow up before. I had an athlete yesterday and her parents are going through a divorce, and I had to have a conversation and just say, hey, at Showcase, like you were a little bit late to Showcase. And I had the conversation with mom, dad, and child and just said, hey, we just need to be on time. And I didn't know exactly how to approach this, but I knew that I needed everyone in the room. And I said to the daughter, I'm like, hey, you're growing up and it's kind of going to be your job now to make sure you have all of your stuff and you're ready to go and you're ready when you're supposed to be ready. She said, but I just turned 11 today. And I said, I know. Welcome to adulthood. And I was like half kidding here, but I did the same thing at 10. Like you have to grow up a little bit as a kid and you shouldn't have to. It's not life, but like It's just a new type of growing up. Like you now have to remember and you have to think ahead a little bit and stuff like that. So this is hard. This is hard for the kids in our gym. But knowing that your gym might be the only consistent thing in their life in that moment makes your role as the owner and your coach's roles so much more important. So for these parents and for these kids, you have to remember that as the owner, you have to be consistent. You have to have consistent policies in place. Ideally, they're all written out. You've gone over it with them because not everybody is going to read everything, and that you have some policies in place so that everyone knows what to expect. Mom, dad, if the child is 12, 13, 14, like they kind of get it too, and everybody knows what they're responsible for. As an owner, you have to have compassion for the challenging situations. Like, divorce doesn't put people at their best. In fact, a couple of years ago, my daughter had a high school coach that we just didn't have the best experience. And when I found out that that coach was going through a divorce, I was like, man, I kind of get it. Like, it puts you at your worst in some ways. There's nobody out there that's like, I'm going through a divorce. This is the best I've ever been in my life. Like, there's just nobody like that. And so having compassion, even if the parents seem irrational at times and they get upset more easily and they're more flustered and they're more disorganized, like, we have to have some compassion and some sympathy for that because this is a major life event for them. A mom who may have put cheer as number one, the most important thing for her kids in their lives. And we know that because we all have those parents that like, cheer is so important to the kids that it's almost like number one for the mom. Well, now put that mom in the middle of a divorce and it's like number 239 after everything else. That's hard for coaches and hard for owners to sometimes understand the shift in priorities over time. We get frustrated because we're like, why can't you just be organized? Why can't you just be on time? Why can't you just manage your finances? But like, these are all things that completely shift in the middle of a divorce, and we have to have compassion for those things. A mom who may have been an at-home mom now maybe has to go work. A mom who was super organized before, maybe she just moved. Or a dad who was organized before, maybe they just moved from a house to an apartment, or, they're living in two different parts of the house right now. And so that it's hard for them to like stay organized with their things. We just have to remember that there's so much going on for these parents in the middle of a divorce, especially, guys. You can have the best day and the worst day all at the same time. Your coaches, especially those who are like, yes, you're high school age coaches, but my guess for the majority of our listeners is that your high school age coaches are probably not your head coaches. Your head coaches maybe are college age or older. But if you're a coach who doesn't have like a lot of adulting experience and, you're not at the age yet where your friends have been married and divorced with children, it's just hard because I don't always think that those coaches have enough life experience to realize how challenging it's going to be for the parents. When someone says to me, hey, her dad didn't realize we had an extra practice, she's with dad, and they have a family event that goes until, 3:00 on Sunday. Unfortunately, I cannot get her any sooner for practice. I'm really sorry. I'm going to be honest. There's times that I'm like, hey, I get it. It's okay. Like, if we're 2 weeks out from showcase, 2 weeks out from competition, like, life happens before cheer happens. And if there's anything to put cheer into perspective, it's these other life events that happen. It can be really hard to deal with divorce as a child. It can be hard to deal with it as a parent, as a coach, as a gym owner. Some really hard things kind of come out of divorce sometimes. At our gym, we've had situations where there was an order of protection against one parent to another parent, not necessarily to the child, but to the parent. And I've actually had this happen a couple times in the gym. And it's like, oh my gosh, how do we navigate this? Like, the parent is allowed to be there to watch their child's practice or to be at the competition, but they're not supposed to be within so many feet of the other parent. Like, that's been a big challenge for us. And I've had to unfortunately get involved and say, who is she with this week? Okay, she's with dad, then dad can be here. And mom, I guess if you guys aren't supposed to be within so many yards of each other, you may have to watch from across the gym, or you may have to be outside. And if she gets any new skills, we'll send you the videos. Guys, it's almost impossible to not have to get involved if you get drama in your gym like that. I've had situations before where a parent went to go pick up their child from, well, we have a childcare program, but like even if they're picking up the child from practice and you've been notified as the gym that nobody will pick up that child except the mom. Well, I've learned over the years that when something like that is said to me, the question I ask back is, do you have a legal document that you can provide for me that verifies that that is the case? If I'm being blunt, it's a lot of times a mom or a dad that doesn't want the other parent to pick up the child, and because they're in the middle of a nasty divorce and there isn't a parenting agreement yet, which is usually the first thing that courts try to get solidified. But, I've had that situation before and I had to go back to the mom and say, but is there a legal document that says that she is not allowed to be with him? Who is she supposed to be with today? Okay, she's supposed to be with dad today and there's no legal document that says she can't go with dad. Dad is here to pick her up and I have to release her to dad. It's such an impossible decision to make sometimes. There may be situations where someone is getting overly angry or overly aggressive, and you maybe have to call in the sheriff's department or call in the police and just say, I'm not sure what to do in this situation. Can you please help me figure out what comes next? Are you maybe going to create more drama by doing that? Yeah. It's possible. But what I can tell you is for some of those situations where, a parent has gotten really angry in the midst of those things, usually things die down in the weeks that follow. And once everything is over and there's a clear parenting agreement, you can have that conversation with the parent and say, I'm so sorry. This was a new situation for me. I didn't exactly know what to believe, but now I know that this needs to be our policy moving forward. We've experienced situations of parental alienation where one parent has completely turned the child or children against another parent to the point that that child has panic attacks when the one parent comes into the gym. So this is a really sad episode today, guys, but it doesn't have to be. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. So how do we run it as gym owners so that the safe place can remain the safe place for the kids? That's the number one goal here is like, I talked to an athlete this week and actually her parents aren't even divorced. We'll talk on a future episode about other challenging things that your athletes are going through. But she was having just a really it wasn't hard practice, wasn't a hard day. It's like a hard moment in her life right now. And I was talking to her and I said, okay, are you I know we had to make corrections on pyramid and the timing and stuff like that. Are you okay? This isn't normally something that upsets you this much. And she goes, no, I'm okay. I'm just having a hard time right now, but this is my happy place. I got teary-eyed with her because I'm glad that when so many other chaotic things are happening in your life, this is your happy place. And I want to keep it your happy place, even if that means that sometimes I have to go make corrections on pyramid, or I have to say, why didn't you tumble? Or I have to say, you're dipping on the wrong count. Thank goodness though, that we as coaches get to know our athletes well enough. And she's an elite athlete. She's been with us for a couple of years. So I know her well enough to know if something's off a little bit. So how do we run these circumstances as seasoned gym owners so that there is the least amount of negative impact to the remainder of the staff, to the parents who are in the situation, and to the athlete? Number one, season agreements. So obviously we're past this point in the season. You guys probably, in November, maybe you have half year agreements that are going out, but what is signed is signed. As far as your season contracts, I don't do a contract, but I do have a section where they say, yes, I've read the parent handbook and I understand and agree to the policies listed. When you have parents who are divorcing, it's important that you now say, now that this child will be in two different households, I really need signatures from both parents. If one parent lives 1,000 miles away and they're not going to be with them regularly, it's kind of up to you if you think, is it going to impact practices or competitions over winter break or spring break or whatever. But if both parents are local, it is very important that both parents have said, yes, I've read the parent handbook. I understand the financial commitment this season. I understand the time commitment. I agree that she will be at practices and competitions on time. It's important that that's the case. Even if one does not have a financial obligation. As a personal experience in our gym, we always had the other parent, so either my daughter's dad or my stepkids, their mom, always signed the season agreement as well. Now, if we were like, okay, we're going to pay for it this season, they would cross it out. We would both initial the financial section of it, but we would always have that document that said you are agreeing to bring them to practices, you're agreeing to bring them to competitions, you're agreeing to provide the stuff that they need to have to be successful at those. Both parents go on the emails. Both parents go in the band groups or the Facebook groups. Both parents go on the contact. We don't ever just put one because the other parent doesn't want them on there. I've had requests before. I've actually had a parent say, well, he doesn't pay for anything. I do not want him on the band group. And I'm like, okay, does he have custody? If he has custody, he is allowed to be in the band group. It doesn't really matter to me who's paying for anything. It's to your child's advantage. If she is going to be with dad every other week, it is to his advantage to have that stuff. And this isn't a power situation. It's a let's do what's in the best interest of the child. And know that what's in the best interest of the child is probably what both parents are always striving for, but there's always intervening circumstances. There's things that are going to create new challenges and arguments that they're having behind the scenes and with their attorneys, and this is said and this is said. And there's always a power play that's happening in the middle of a divorce anyway. And so it's really important that both parents have signed that. I've had questions before. Dad gets remarried and stepmom wants to join the Facebook group and mom does not want stepmom in the Facebook group. And like, well, if stepmom has potentially any obligation whatsoever, any obligation, then she's in the Facebook group. That's up to dad if he wants to. Yes, she's allowed in there, right? But again, it's those interpersonal relationships and kind of the power play that makes that more challenging. And I have had to reason with parents before. I have had to say, but if having stepmom in the group means that dad is better informed, isn't that better for the child? If having stepmom in the group means that their half of the bill gets paid, and when their credit card expires, I now have 2 contacts that I can call so that I don't have to call you and tell you half the bill is not paid, or we'll get to billing in a minute here. But if I don't have to do that, then isn't that better for everybody? It gets a little bit wild when you get like mom's boyfriend or dad's girlfriend. Like, I'm not going to lie, those get a little bit harder. I've had those before where we've had a boyfriend or a girlfriend that has a lot of opinions on things, or they fill out some sort of survey, or like we're taking a vote on, are you available on this date for the Christmas party? And like 2 parents say yes, 1 parent says no. And it's like, but they're all from the same family. Like it does get confusing in there. And so typically I don't police this super heavily as far as like boyfriends and girlfriends, but I do kind of say, okay, if they're living together and this person has some potential obligation for transportation or finances, or like dad's girlfriend would be the one getting her ready on competition day with makeup and hair and whatnot, then it's probably a benefit. But I kind of let the parent, the mom or the dad with the boyfriend or girlfriend, I kind of let that person be the one to decide. Yeah, they're like really challenging situations. And I guess some of those you have to take case by case, but spouses and other parents, I do not have exceptions for. Like they get all of the same communication, because at that point, by the time you're married and you become someone's stepmom or stepdad, like you may be helping just as much as, that parent may be helping. Okay, payments. I know that's what you guys have been waiting to hear. I made the comment earlier about this person paid their half of the bill, but you didn't pay your half. Let me explain how I do this, because I've had a lot of parents request split payments over the years. I will not create 2 accounts in iClass for this child. To be honest, it throws off my numbers, makes me feel like I have 18 kids instead of 17. It makes us have to take attendance twice. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're clicking it for the kid twice. It's just too complicated. Like it shows that I have more kids enrolled than I actually have. We just don't do it. Flat out, it is not an option. So there is 1 payment account holder in my gym. I don't care if that's mom or dad. It's usually up to the parenting plan. And if they are told that according to their parenting plan, they're going to split everything evenly, then they just need to decide who is the account holder for this child. That is the billing person. If the payments are taken out, so for us, they're taken out on the 1st, the payment is posted on the 20th. They can go into iClass and they can pay their half. They can come to the front desk and they can pay their half. I have one parent who pays her half at the beginning of the season. So then her card is never on file. That's also fine. We just tell dad if any additional purchases are made, like you would be the one to authorize if your card on file, like let's say we add on something. I can't even think of an example because we just don't add things on. But like both parents are going to schedule private lessons for the child. Like that's just the conversation we have of who gets billed for those. I have some parents that, and this is again, not something I necessarily need you to be the mediator to decide, but I have some parents who dad pays regular tuition and competition fees for the whole season. Any extras like private lessons, handspring clinics, anything like that, subscription boxes for the pro shop items, mom pays all of the extras. You have some options in how you do it, but I would highly recommend not doing split payments. It's really hard if dad pays the bill that month and mom didn't pay the bill to now sit the child and explain to dad that though he paid his half, it's not fully paid and the child has to sit. That's a hard conversation to have. So it's quite honestly, it's easier if whoever the billing person is who's on file is fully responsible and the two parents can work it out on their own. And I use this as your example of this. If I take my child to Sky Zone and I'm like, well, her dad's paying half and I'm paying half. That's really great, but nobody is letting that kid play until the entire amount is paid. Nobody cares who pays it or how it's paid. It's just that the whole amount has to be paid. You're going to have to create some policies that make things easy for your staff, and you explain them once to the parents, and honestly, they work it out from there. This has to be a firm policy for you. If you agree to do it for one family, or you have agreed in the past and then it changes for incoming families, that can be a big challenge. We used to allow it many years ago, probably 10 years ago, and I got away from it over time. It's just something that we went back to those families and said, I'm sorry, I appreciate that this has worked for so long. It's really skewing our numbers. It's skewing our data. And so I really need this athlete to have a single account. Schedules and competitions is another one that you need both parents buy-in. Now, if they agreed to the tryout packet or whatever you had at the beginning of the season and that already had, here's the team practice schedule and the competitions. But if your gym is like mine, we don't release practices until after tryouts because we don't even know, are we going to have 8 teams, 9 teams? I don't even know until after tryouts. And at that point, then I have crossovers to deconflict. So it's not like I'm youth 2 will always practice Sunday at 2:00 and Tuesday at 7. As much as I would love to do that, and youth 2 is probably a good example of being able to do that because I always have a youth 2. Outside of that, you'll need to provide the schedules to people and make sure that they're replying back, yes, I received it. Or you're providing the schedule the exact same way to all parents in the gym. Things that we do to make sure both parents are always in the loop. I've talked to you guys before about my weekly email. You can still go to nextgenowners.com/podcast. Scroll down. It's one of the bottom 2 buttons that you see there, and it says Get Danielle's weekly email, and it will give you an example of what we send in the weekly email. And we have all kinds of links and link to this weekend's competition document. I don't know if that example specifically has it, but that is what we would do. And so I allow both parents to be on there. I actually tell people if you have another guardian, I have one child who grandma is who she lives with, and grandma's sister helps with quite a few things. And I've said to her before, she asked, can I get my sister on these emails? She homeschools her during the day. She helps with a lot of rides and hair and stuff like that. I'm like, absolutely. I'm only going to reply to the emails from the parent. So if dad's girlfriend wants to get on there, they're not married and all that, and she wants to ask a question, I'm likely not going to reply to people I don't know, but you can subscribe yourself to that email. And I keep that link very safe and internal, though there's not a ton of private information on it. The weekly email goes to both parents. It goes to step parents. I have a couple of grandparents that are on it because they regularly provide transportation. This is how we keep that communication flowing. Everyone gets the same information. If I host a parent meeting, which sometimes I do, there are times that I think 5 minutes at the beginning or end of practice is the best way that we can communicate so that I can give body language, especially if it's maybe a bad situation. I had at Showcase, I had one team that a couple of the athletes demonstrated some unsportsmanlike conduct. And though I jokingly say I'm going to carry a yellow flag in my pocket if I ever see it again, ultimately, I wanted to have that conversation with the athletes and I wanted their parents present because I think those are conversations that happen both at the gym and then they follow the children home so that the parents can have here's how our family handles this kind of thing. But when I have those parent meetings, it goes in the weekly email, or I post it in their, team Facebook group, and I make sure that everyone is seeing it because they all have to comment, got it. Or I just say, hey, we're hosting the parent meeting at this time. And now it's open to everyone who is, a parent or guardian. And I had parents who maybe the child was with dad that week, but mom also showed up. And that's great because it keeps everyone in the loop because I'm giving very even and equal communication throughout. Everyone has the same opportunity to get the information is the goal there. A couple of the things that you may not think about. One of the things that I got to experience this week, and I'll say this without it getting too personally identifying, but a family in the gym who is going through a divorce, and the athlete is 11 and it's going to be a brand new experience for her. We're trying to figure out now what's the best way to put the athlete in a position for success so she doesn't feel like competition day is chaotic. At first it was like, okay, my suggestion to them, and I think you have to be very cautious when you do suggestions like this. Luckily, I had experience and I was able to say, so here's what we did with my kids back in the day. We had one competition bag. It had both uniforms, cheer and dance uniforms in it. They were in a Ziploc bag, and like a big Ziploc bag, and they were labeled. It had a list of everything that should be in that bag: KT tape, bobby pins, wax stick, whatever. And then it had the shoes that the athlete had to put in the bag at the end of practice, last practice before competition. Like, these are the things that are in the bag. And that bag will go to the parent who has the athlete for the weekend. So if the child is with dad for the weekend, by Friday, that dad has that bag and it has everything. And whoever gave, if mom had the bag previously, she checked and everything is in there. Now, at the end of tomorrow's competition, dad takes the bag home. Kid's probably still wearing the uniform when they leave, washes the uniform, puts it back in the bag, takes an inventory of what's in the bag, makes sure everything's back in there. And then at the end, whatever competition is next, our December competition, if that child's going to be with mom, he gives the bag right away to mom. If the child's going to be with dad, he keeps it, puts it up in the closet. Like, we don't touch our competition stuff. I don't know about you guys, but like, my daughter's 15 and still to this day, our hairspray doesn't get touched unless it is our competition day hairspray. Like, it doesn't come out of that cheer bag. I have a wax stick that's just for that cheer bag. I have the BioFreeze in the deep blue just for that cheer bag. Like, honestly, cheer shoes and like our tank top that goes over our cheer uniform are like the only two things that come in or out of the bag on a regular basis. You will run into some issues. For example, in a situation where, mom has to buy something in particular, curling irons or whatever that would normally be at her house, or dad has to have something. Yeah, you can run into these really tricky situations where somebody's like, I just spent $50 on makeup. I don't want it to go over to that house. Honestly, I recommended to this particular family this week, just whoever buys it, I don't care, but keep it in the bag and don't touch it for anything else because it doesn't belong to mom. It doesn't belong to dad. It belongs to the kid. So now they can show up at competition feeling like, okay, I have everything I need. If my other parent just happens to be late, no big deal. If they get stuck in the parking lot, they can't find parking, they can't find us, they can't, whatever. The kid has everything they need right there with them. So maybe I'm harping on this too much. I just, what we did years ago, it took us some trial and error to figure out, like, how do we do it so that the kid always feels confident that they have everything they need? And if you have different teams going to different events, like, it would get confusing. Is dance competing at this event? Is prep competing at this event? I don't know. And so just to have your bag with all your stuff, I still do it today. I actually keep my daughter's bag. She's 15. Sometimes it takes me a few times to get stuff back from her. She likes the wax stick. She likes certain makeup. But even to this day, we have a bag and it is the competition bag. It's like your go bag, but for competition. So let's talk about some communication rules we have. Everything gets communicated to both parents. The only time that I maybe wouldn't is like we had an athlete that still had she still had signs of a mild concussion earlier in the week. So I didn't let her practice. But then by last night, she had passed enough of the milestones that I was like, okay, because you missed your practice, let's call in your stunt group. Let's run your stunts a couple of times so that you feel good about Saturday. I didn't reach out to both parents. I reached out for one of the athletes. I reached out to one parent and said, hey, is she with you tomorrow night? And then I got busy doing other things and he awkwardly said yes. And then there was like a 2-hour wait and he's like, why? I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. Let me circle back to that. But like, that would be the only time that I'm only telling one parent is if I'm like, hey, tomorrow night, can she come in for a quick 30-minute stunt private just to make sure we can run through these stunts and, they feel good. Never accept responsibility for being a messenger. If dad or mom is like, hey, will you tell dad this? Will you tell mom this? Like, I don't want to accept responsibility for any of that, to be honest. Like, I've got hundreds of kids in the gym. I've got my own kids. I just don't know that I'm going to be capable of remembering to be your messenger. So like, will you do me a favor and just you two communicate so that I don't mess anything up? Just don't accept responsibility for being the messenger on those things. Verify anything the athlete, especially, I say especially younger kids, but like verify anything the athlete is telling you. I've had athletes tell me before, my dad said that next weekend I won't be at competition because of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? And then I go talk to mom or dad, whoever's there in the time, and they're like, no, she's actually with me next weekend. Like, so kids do get confused. And on top of that, to be very honest, kids can become the manipulators at times. They're really in a tough position altogether. And the last thing you want is for that child to then become the manipulator and create more problems just because they were confused. You're not Judge Judy. You are not in the divorce court. I don't think she is either, to be honest, but who runs divorce court these days? Is that Steve Harvey? I don't know. You are not a divorce court judge, though. It's not your job to enforce custody agreements. It's not your job to tell so-and-so that it's their responsibility to pay this portion or whatever. Again, that's why we have one billing contact. Both parents are in communication. Everyone has agreed to competition schedules, practice schedules, and whatnot. The middle of a divorce, to be honest, you guys, and this is from someone, I got divorced 15 years ago. The middle of the divorce is always the stickiest. And then anytime you have a major life event, like one parent moves far away or, you're renegotiating child support or something like that. But to be honest, the beginning stages of a divorce are always going to be the stickiest for the gym. I have had probably more in our early years, and maybe it was just me not knowing how to handle it at the time. But I have had the gym become the casualty before, to be honest. Like, parents were in the middle of the divorce and one of them didn't feel comfortable enough even being in the gym because mom had had her friends in the gym. We had known her really well. We had a very friendly relationship with her. We really didn't know dad that well. And as a result, dad didn't want them to cheer the next year. It was just too uncomfortable. So whatever your opinion is on that, just know sometimes that's the case. Sometimes they have a hard time agreeing on the finances and extracurriculars, but there is always going to be a parenting plan. I believe it's required in like all 50 states that there is some sort of parenting plan. And to be honest, it's none of your business what it says, unless somebody is trying to tell you that, a judge has ordered you to do split payments, which judges, I don't think they can. And I don't think they ever would. So yeah. I do want to say I once had somebody tell me that. And I was like, no, this just says that you guys have to split your payments. I have one payment. So there's an emotional impact on the athlete. And there's a few things your coaches are going to have to be aware of. And again, I'm speaking a lot to your like 18, 19, 20-year-old coaches because people my age have friends who have had divorces now. There's not a lot of coaches out there who are my age who don't know how to handle this yet with children. But they do need to be aware of sudden changes in attendance, of course. Maybe a kid who is never late, but now they're late every other week, or they're only late to their Sunday practices every other week. Give them some grace, you guys. Have the conversation with the parent unless it is very clear that the athlete is the reason they're late. I have a couple of sisters that were late last week, and I walked up to them during warm-ups. I said, hey, just checking in. Whose fault was it that you were late? Did mom get off work late? Or was she waiting at the door for you guys, like calling over and over? And the one girl said, oh no, my mom said she hit every red light. And mom had like dropped them off and then didn't come in at the time. And I asked the other sister the same question. She goes, that was not my fault. We were sitting in the car waiting for her. And I was like, okay, no problem. That could be a whole episode. But like my policy is if it's the kid's fault, we're going to have a talk. Like there's going to be some consequences if mom is literally just standing there waiting for you and you don't have your life together. But if it's the mom or dad's fault, like, we can let it go a couple times, guys. Parenting is hard. If it's every time, then we'll have the conversation with the parents, not so much the kids. Coaches, keep an eye on mood changes or withdrawal. Like, we just don't know how kids are going to react in these situations. Overcompensation is kind of the same. A kid who is normally happy, but now they're really happy. They're over the top talkative, they're over the top social, they're over the top silly, can also be signs of like a hyper awareness or like trying to please. Kids can have increased sensitivity to corrections. Maybe corrections, hey, you're supposed to dip on 4, which by the way, choreographers, stop giving me even numbers. I don't work well with even numbers. Give me odd numbers. I understand things have to go fast, but it doesn't work for me. But like you're supposed to dip on 4 and the kid's dipping on 6. Like if you go make a correction kindly that you're like, hey, so this, you need to dip on 4 or else you guys will be late. You need to dip on 4 or your flyer is not going to be prepared for this, whatever. And that athlete has an unusual sensitivity to the corrections. Now you know that there's something additional going on there. And don't expect every athlete to have that conversation with you. Some of them are embarrassed and they want to keep that to themselves. But knowing that maybe you need to handle that situation differently, or you need to kind of pull your alarm that like something more might be going on with that athlete, pay attention to those things. If there's tension when one parent is bringing the child versus the other, that can happen. And like, do not judge. If a kid is stressed out because dad is there and not mom and whatever, it doesn't mean that one parent is terrible and the other person is great. Like, don't make those assumptions and don't judge. It's simply a matter of what might be happening in the athlete's life in that moment. I have seen dads who have never been in the gym before. I actually, years ago, guys, I had a family that was with us for like 10 or 11 years. I say years ago, but yeah, they were like before I even had a gym, and I was just coaching rec out at a community center, and they were with us, and mom and dad ended up getting divorced. And I maybe had seen dad at one competition ever among these girls. The girls were always crossovers. They were always on dance and cheer. And I had maybe only ever seen dad at one competition ever. And they got divorced and the girls moved in with dad. Dad stepped up. Like dad was there for everything. He actually used to bring in a lawn chair and he would like take naps during practice. It was kind of bizarre. It was always like a weird topic of conversation during gym tours, but you know, I don't even care. Like, I'm just glad he was there. Like, don't make judgments. They're not yours to make. You know, a child's 100% effort or their best is going to look different on some weeks. It's not your job to be a therapist. It's not your job to try to get them to talk. It's simply your job to support them and show them that they are loved and there is consistency. This is an opportunity to tell the coaches in your gym, just because a child's parents are getting divorced doesn't mean don't make those corrections in the routine. You might need to make them more gently. You might need to just better read the situation. Maybe you make them exactly the same as you did before. Our goal here is to keep a consistent environment that a child can know what to expect from week to week, because that's not the life they're living at home in that moment, most likely. So when drama follows them into the gym, some of your step parents have some main character energy. And this is coming from a step parent who was very involved. Imagine that the step parent is the one who owns the gym and runs the gym. That's some main character energy. I have always had some compassion for my stepkids, for their mom, because it is hard. You go to a competition and I'm running the show. I'm the one saying, why were you late? They really weren't that late ever, but I'm the one saying her hair needs to look like this. I'm the one that's saying, okay, I need to take them early for warm-ups. When you get a step parent with that kind of energy or that kind of involvement, it can be a challenge for the rest of the family dynamic. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I love when I see step parents who are super engaged and involved. We had a shout out this past weekend at our showcase, and we put them on a TV monitor, but we also say them. And I love it because one of the shout outs was like, we love you, mom, dad, stepdad. And I was like, that is so cool. Like, I love that they have that kind of unity among that, because all it does is make it better for the child. The big thing here is make sure it is very clear in your packet or parent communication that the behavior expectations of the adults is equal for all adults that are connected to the athlete, period. All adults. So we've talked a lot about potential problems that you can have. It's not your job, guys, to fix anyone's family. Don't become a divorce judge. Don't become a divorce mediator. It's not your job to do any of that. Your first and foremost priority is the athlete. Your second priority is making sure that the communication is equal among everyone so that they pay their fees on time. Everyone is where they need to be with the uniforms and the stuff they need. And all the other things, honestly, will fade over time. All the drama that they might be experiencing in the middle of the divorce, it will fade over time. A new normal will be established. And hopefully you've created the kind of consistency that if that new normal were for whatever reason not going to include your gym, that athlete would say something. And just know that you can't always prevent certain things either. Maybe the parenting agreement says that they have to each pay their portion 50-50, and now one of the parents can no longer afford it. Like, you and your gym may become the casualty of this, and that's okay too, because it doesn't mean that you didn't play an important role in that child's life during that time. You're responsible for offering a safe, fun environment, a consistent place for that athlete to thrive. And when you set clear expectations, you are more likely to be able to do those things. Okay, you guys, so this was a very deep discussion. I probably could have made it a 2-part discussion, to be honest, because there's so much involved. I didn't even go into like what happens when a staff member is getting divorced and stuff, because it's kind of a depressing topic, but like, I think it's so important, because if our policies are created before you encounter the situation, then you are more likely to look organized, be organized, and keep your cool, even in those really tricky situations. So guys, if you have not yet checked out the Next Gen Academy or our CheerBiz Accelerator, make sure you head over to nextgenowners.com. Check out all of the amazing resources and tools that we have there for you, and definitely book your call to learn more about one of our programs, the CheerBiz Accelerator or the Next Gen Academy, to see what might be a good fit for you. This is like one tiny thing that it's huge in the lives of the people involved, but one tiny thing we deal with in our gyms, and a one-on-one coach can help you so much, especially when it's foggy for you because you're in the midst of it. Having a coach to walk you through the things, who can see the fact and can see through the emotion, is so valuable for gym owners. All right, you guys, if you liked this episode, make sure to give me I don't know how you do it on podcasts, like a couple of stars, like all the stars if they have them, or however that works. Definitely subscribe to the podcast so that you get every episode. And also head over to the CheerBiz podcast and check out Dan's episodes for more insight on how to run your cheer gym. All right, you guys. And with that, I will see you on the next episode.